Clint.
Colette,
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm what I call good busy these days. So I
Good,
have like
busy.
interesting, challenging work that keeps my plate very full all the time. And
Nice.
even though there are always still constant interrupts, uh, that feels good. And then like life outside of work is busy too. I have family visiting.
Hmm.
It's Halloween, so
It
we're
is
like,
Halloween.
yeah. So just
Do you
busy,
do you
and
guys
like,
still
but good
dress
busy.
up? Do you guys still dress up for Halloween?
So my youngest is 9. She's
Oh,
definitely dressing up.
yeah.
She has a partner costume with her friend. Uh, she is left shark. Her friend is right shark.
Oh,
They don't have a Katy Perry, but
yeah.
that's
You don't
actually
need
my joke.
one.
They're just going as
Yeah,
sharks, but I'm
yeah.
like, you're left shark. Yeah. She's like, what's that?
She doesn't know.
But yeah. And then my 13-year-old, who's an eighth grader, is doing low effort. So he like picked a video game character that wears pink and yellow sunglasses. Um, whose name is Spamton J. Spamton, I think. So he just got some cheap glasses and colored them with highlighters, and
Oh,
that's what
nice.
he's doing because that's a very eighth grade way to approach it.
Yeah, yeah.
And my 16-year-old would
It's
not be
way too
caught
cool.
dead
Yeah, for Halloween. I
out
think
there.
that's the
Yeah.
funny thing, right? Like my daughter is dressing up as Elsa, obviously, and she was begging me to dress up as Anna, and I was like, I don't really want to dress up as Anna, but it's also very sweet, and I felt really bad. And then my husband ordered a fox mask and like a cape, and I ended up wearing the fox mask at the Halloween parade last Sunday, and I actually had a really good time. So I ordered my own, and now I'm like gonna dress up. But until now, the age of 44, I have been too cool for Halloween since like I don't know, I was 13 or 14, I guess. And it's
Yeah.
kind of funny that like having younger kids like helps me not be too cool for Halloween anymore. Like it's actually
It
really
kills
fun.
all your cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
I'm
sure.
just I'm just like, no, I'll dress up. It seems like fun. But I'm not gonna be Anna. I draw the line at Disney characters, I guess.
But have you like dressed up at like parties? Like adult Halloween
No,
parties? No?
no,
Nothing at all. Cuz I
no.
love it. I freaking
I
love
just
dressing
never
up.
have gotten into it, but now I might start getting into it. And again, I was never the kind of person who would like yuck somebody else's yum if somebody else wanted to do it, but I just never felt like compelled to do that. And now I'm like, oh no, this is really cool. I want to do it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I've even like my wife is also very cool, and like
She is very cool.
she
I know
gets
this
into
about
it
you.
though.
Yeah.
She's very cool, way cooler than me. And she even did a partner like a group costume with me where I dressed up as Vincent from oh my god, what is it? The Quentin Tarantino movie.
Pulp
And
Fiction?
she Pulp Fiction. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
Vincent from Pulp Fiction. She was Uma Thurman's character,
Oh
and
yeah.
we like stuck like a syringe in her and everything, and that was like
That's great.
so much fun. And
See,
everybody
I
would
think
come up
that's
to us
really
and give us
fun.
this dance. It's really fun.
Yeah, again, I've caught the bug apparently. So now I'm all in.
Can't wait to see the pics.
Yeah. Um Okay, so we're going to release an episode. We're a little bit out of order because you and I both know that we have an episode that's in the can already that I'm still editing because it's with a really well-known person and it's taken me a while to get through the notes of everything. But we're going to do an episode just us. And we think that we have a question. This question actually like goes back to a while ago, like last year. Sorry to this person who wrote us this question. We haven't gotten to it yet. I like went back to stuff we hadn't answered. There isn't much that we haven't answered, but this is in there. So this says, I'd love to hear a conversation about how to speak to senior leadership about the value of having a dedicated incident communicator role at an org. Communicator, command. I mean, I think that's the interesting question, but we can certainly talk about that, I think. You and I. So how do we start? How many, I'm curious. So at Hashi now there are dedicated incident commanders. I would know this.
Yeah. Yeah. Since you helped
Now,
form that team, yes.
since I'm responsible for that occurring. And I
And
w
but there are also volunteer incident commanders
Yes,
that
and that was
and they
part of
work
the
in the
plan.
same
That was
group.
part of the design. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think, we've both worked together quite a lot. Um, and, at both we saw at Spotify, there was a volunteer incident command group that ran incidents that were kind of what we call like escalated incidents that were touching more than one team or like seemed big. This particular incident command group could be brought in to run incidents. They were volunteers, so they were people who were on call as like an extra layer of on call. They were often like senior staff, like higher level engineers. So we've experienced that. And have you ever worked anywhere where there is no centralized coordinated incident command
Well,
capability?
I have a weird like no. No. There wasn't much at GoDaddy. So GoDaddy had a pretty rich um incident culture, but very different than any of the other ones that I've experienced since then. And there's this big weird gap where I didn't really do operational work because I was working in open source, like
Mm,
specifically open
yep.
source infrastructure tooling. I wasn't really running anything other than the open source ops for OpenStack, but that isn't the same thing. So prior to that, like before I knew about incident command, resilience engineering, prior to SRE even, the companies that I worked at uh, had no such thing and barely had a concept of an incident. Right?
Mm,
Like we knew that something weird is happening and everyone has to pay attention, but we didn't like have all this uh, public art around it with internet operations. So we were like inventing things on the fly. And I remember being in like the sysadmin for a pretty big, like it was like the New York Times job search. So pretty like serious piece of infrastructure, and I just had to fix it. And I also had to communicate with people constantly interrupting me, being like, hey, I just talked to, the CEO of the New York Times and they want to know when it's going to be back up. And I'm
when is
like,
this?
I'm running
Are we
a
there yet?
restore from
Are we
backup
there
right now.
yet?
Yeah. Yeah. And just like the stress and the like, I don't know what to do. And like that confusion and being way more junior in my career, like it wasn't great. And may have
Yeah.
even led to me being like, maybe I should just go work in software for a while. I don't want to do ops for a while. So yeah,
Yeah.
I've worked in both types of environments, and Spotify was the first one where there was a modicum of formality,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
IMOC got
there were people already
trained.
working on it.
Yep. Yeah, and there was training and there was like it was also like considered a very prestigious thing to get invited to do. Like you had to be at Spotify, you had to be quite senior to be considered to be a part of IMOC. It was considered like a very I don't know what it's like now. Like they may have changed that or
It was Stone Cold Ninjas though. Like
yeah,
everybody on that was a total
everybody in
ninja.
IMOC like
Yeah.
knew and that was it was always so interesting to watch because if there was an incident and there were multiple, things like teams that needed to be contacted or whatever, these people had like encyclopedic knowledge of, this is even pre backstage. I watched this happen where it's not like you can just go search for like, in a wiki somewhere, like who owns the service? Like people would just like it was very, very impressive to see the institutional knowledge that was there um, and on display for the folks who were running incident command. I did work at a startup in between uh, Spotify and they didn't have a because I do think there's probably a scale where like when you're small enough, it kind of like maybe you don't need an I don't know. I don't actually have an opinion on this, but like it doesn't seem like people advocate for a dedicated incident command role until you hit something. I don't know what.
Yeah, formalizing when you're still like in that weird like amoeba shape Of like, like, is this going to be the business that takes off, or is this going to be the business that takes off? It's really hard to like decide, like, this is important enough to have dedicated people to keep it running, right?
Well,
I
and it's
assume
also
that's where you were at.
yeah, I mean, I also think what I noticed was that infra people would always get pulled in. And I think this is the pattern that I saw happening was like there were like 3 or 4 people on the infra team who were like just constant presences in incidents, right? And a lot of the incidents like were noticed by the infra team first, and so they would run them even if they were related to other like teams or whatever. And I think it was really like I think not having more of a shared that was like one of the inspirations when I went into Hashi and wanted to create an incident team was like that like having seen how the sort of informality can cause uh burdens on people who don't always see it, like they don't always notice it and they don't always know how to get themselves out of that situation either, right? And so sometimes like I don't know, I think having people who are experts and having them available to help you run an incident well. And this isn't necessarily experts in technology per se, but they might be experts in your organization, right? I think another interesting thing that people don't really get is like to run an incident well as an incident commander or an incident communicator, like somebody who's like running comms for an incident, which was also like a separate role in some of the places that I worked. You don't have to be like super technical necessarily, but you do have to understand the lay of your organizational land, and you have to understand your customers, and you have to understand how to talk to engineers basically. I feel like those are the
Actually,
requirements.
I totally agree. And yes, and the in fact, being an engineer can compromise that.
Mm.
Um, and so both at the Spotify group and at the Hashi group, there's like big signs on the top of the like guidebook, handbook type material that says, "Do not get pulled into investigations." Right? Like, don't do it. And
Yeah.
what
Do
do
not
we
open your
love to
terminal.
do?
Don't open your
Right?
terminal.
Yeah, like if you're like now, like you have certain technical things that like you have I always say that you're kind of like the janitor with all the keys. You should be
Mm.
that. You are the
Mhm.
person who can open all the doors. Um and you kind of should be kind of familiar with where the doors are. But beyond that, like you may hear something, you're like, I know something about this. And all you can do is ask that people, are you aware of? That's as much as you
Mhm.
can like. And those people who were getting pulled into incidents in the informal situation are generally just people who have all the keys, and people who kind of, because of that fact, they do get pulled in because they're like, well, I think that team could get us into this or might know something about it,
Yeah.
right? But when
Yeah.
it's informal, it's like this funnel that every incident ends up
Yeah.
on those people's plates,
Yeah.
and just putting like one layer between them that is
Yes.
like incident command, and being like, just give incident command the keys. They might not have to bug that team. In fact, that would be a huge win for that team to get some kind of a break and remain proactive for another hour of the day.
Yeah. Have you ever had to advocate for having incident command or like a separate incident minder role?
I've had to advocate to let me be it, for sure. Like I want to go and do that for this organization. Um, but it's never been a hard fight. Like, and that may be owing to my conviction about how necessary it is. I can be, hard to argue with, but like in general, I've started like this. This is like directly to the question being asked. Um, I have a certain set of skills and talents that lend themselves to making incidents go better.
Mm.
That is something like through my experience and just I know myself. when I get involved with incidents, they tend to go better, which is why I get pulled into them anyway. I would like to join a group of people like that and make it formal. And that seems to resonate. Like, oh, yeah, of course. Like, that sounds like a good idea. Like, say more. And then there's a whole list of like, in order to do that well, we should spend some time together syncing up on what we actually do in incidents. You need to spend some time like looking at that handbook, investing a little bit in the incident process itself. That needs to be owned by us essentially because we're going to be driving it. So that's going to take some time away from whatever else I might be doing. But from a team perspective, I've never had to argue. Like, I've never been in the position of there should be a whole dedicated team for this. It's always just been like me and people like me are going to be able to make a big impact by doing this. It also, side note, is one of the few things that, like, as an ops person, you can do that is such a clear promotion signal.
Mm,
You know, like, I am working across teams,
mm.
right? That's what everybody wants to see in the Staff Plus promotion cycle is like, well, what is your cross org impact?
Yeah.
Well, I got involved with all the biggest incidents in the company,
Mhm.
right? That's also been a motivator for me.
Yeah, and you know, if you're a part of it and part of your remit is to improve it, you can also speak to those improvements that you made that are touching every single team in the org, right? Like if you're doing something like that. I like uh so I have had to make cases. um and I think like here's what I will say. I think that, like any change that you want to make in an organization, people have to be feeling you have to point to the pain. So there has to be pain, and you have to explain the pain to people who aren't necessarily feeling it, but they might be able to observe it, right? In my case, what happened was it was noticed by multiple senior folks in our organization that some incidents went better than others, and that had to do with having particular people with particular skill sets running those incidents. And so, you know, you take advantage of those conversations or those observations and you say, no, the answer isn't to pull those two people or three people into every single incident because that will burn them out very, very quickly. And then they won't be here anymore. And then you won't have your incidents running very well at all. The answer is to figure out what are those skills that they have, and can we make a focused effort on staffing up a set of people around those, like gaining those skill sets by shadowing and learning from the folks who have them, potentially by doing training. We did some training with some outside groups. There are outside groups that do this really well. Um, I will link to some of them in the show notes. But the idea to me was like, hey, we need to have this rotation. And it needs, in my opinion, it needs to be representative of not just my organization, which was SRE, but it also needed to have people from across the engineering. I very much took what I took from Spotify was the value of that volunteer organization in their presence all sprinkled all around the whole engineering, like all of R&D was so profound when it came to noticing issues or like having that, like they were often staff or senior staff engineers that were across other like huge organizations, right? So when they saw something in an incident, they had a lot of leverage and time to be able to go follow up with things and improve things at their more local level that wouldn't have otherwise happened. And I think that was super valuable, like knowledge to have on the rotation. That being said, the weakness was that they didn't own the process per se in a like we can make concerted effort to improve this constantly.
Yeah.
Because they were volunteer. There was like a, you know, it's like I have 5 hours, you know, a month to give to this, right? That's not enough time to make meaningful ownership level improvements over some of these things. And so my proposal was we're going to have representatives as part of this rotation, but they're going to have there's going to also be a home team that owns this process that is part of that rotation, right? That minds the rotation, that makes sure that people, it's a healthy rotation full of people who are trained and understand what's expected of them and are feeling like they're getting good feedback and, all of those things. That there is this sort of meta piece of like owning that health that can only really come from like owning any code base can only really come from having a team where it kind of lives. And I made that case. I pointed out the pain. They already saw that pain, but the other pain that I would say that happens if you don't, the sort of inverse of that pain is like if those 4 people or whatever are getting pulled into all the incidents, they're gonna burn out. They're gonna be, and so the but that might be pain that you need to make more explicit to leadership because they might just be like, oh, this person's amazing and they're very visible and they are very senior. And so, like, thank goodness we have them. And it's like, no, like, let's step back for a second. And what happened if we didn't have them? Like, what would we
Right.
do? And like, how do we make sure that this skill set gets transferred to other people, just like knowledge of any code base gets transferred to other people, right?
And they don't, no matter who they are, they don't scale with business and with surface area, right? Like those people are actually pretty rare. Those people naturally just do it. And I'm calling myself out here. I'm pretty rare. Like who are good at it and want to do it and naturally don't get burned out doing, because
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't actually burn me out. If you pulled me into every incident in the company, I would just be giddy. I would just be like, haha, I
Right.
have
But
an
you wouldn't
excuse
be
not to
getting
do
anything
that
else
hard stuff.
done.
But I would get nothing done. I
Right.
have
You
so
wouldn't
much
be
more
able
to
to.
offer.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that awareness that I do gain from joining some incidents pulls back into the work that I do and that my team does. And I bring that back to my team and I say, you know what? I just learned the craziest thing. Do you know what this team does? And they'll be like, what? They do what? That's so weird. Cool. Great. We should do that. We shouldn't do that. Oh my God. Do they need help? Right? Like whatever it is, that like learning, that tacit learning that came from it becomes explicit learning for the people around the incident commanders. If they actually have the space to do that, if they're just constantly interrupt driven, then you're just disappointed in their proactive output, right? And they could burn out if they're that type, and you are not sure what it is that they're doing, but you need them to keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I have written documents. So I had to like write a funding request document, which is an official type of document for the team that I started. And it identified the pain points and it identified, I don't want to say best practices, but identified some patterns of options that exist in the industry, right? And how we would think about them. I think like the risk, right, of advocating for something like this is that somebody starts thinking, oh, well, we're going to have a centralized on call. And then like the teams won't have to be on call. And it's like, no, 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 no. The
It's not
teams have to
that.
be on call for
Yeah.
their stuff when it breaks. Like that's not changing, right? It's that there's going to be somebody who's in charge of orchestrating communication about that breakage, relaying information to the right people, making sure that everybody's communicating and like moving the incident forward. If it's stuck, uh, all kinds of things. So I think also being very explicit about what it is and what it isn't in a written document is very valuable to the people that you are trying to communicate with about it. Um, yeah,
Well, and I
and
think there's more. There's more to it, right? Oh, sorry, you were
no,
ending.
go ahead.
I just
I
like
also wrote a
the
vision.
type of what's that?
I also wrote a vision of like what
Yeah,
good looked
yeah.
like I painted a picture, right, of what does good look like when all of this is
In a
happening
world
in a world.
with incident
Command.
commanders. Yeah, I have to give my movie voice out.
Mhm.
No, the thing that I like about what you did there, because I interact with that team a lot, and it is different than the Spotify experience in many positive ways, is that it wasn't just incident command. So we're talking a lot about incident command, which is just a clear win. Like I think it's very easy to see having people who are trained to like lower the temperature, to open doors, to facilitate communication in and out of the incident. Uh, that's like, that makes sense to anybody who has ever paid attention and been on any incident call or bridge or in a war room, whatever it is. Like having one person who's like in charge and running a process that's defined. But what you did in that document, and what I think is a valuable thing, and actually even the original question was an incident communicator, as you pointed out that in that position, there's not always an incident today. Like there might be, it depends on your type of org, but there may not be an incident for days, weeks, whatever. But there's always incident stuff that's not getting done, that's being done poorly. There's learnings to be shared, and there's iteration on that process. And that team also does that. And I kind of look at it as like, would we want, if we were like on an aircraft carrier, would we want the fire suppression team to be volunteer, or would we, right? Or would we
Right.
want them to be dedicated? Even though there's maybe never a fire, you walk by that place and you see it's clean, and everything is labeled, and there are people in there doing push-ups or whatever it is they're doing. They're ready for the fire, right? And they're like thinking about it, and they're talking to people about like, hey, don't stack that stuff there. That's not to fire code. That kind of stuff leads to better outcomes, and good leaders, I think, when they're brought to that space, want that to happen.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, well, it was part of my I very much in my gut felt that a team that only did like ran incidents and even just did incident analysis and ran incidents or whatever, I felt like that wouldn't survive layoff culture. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I needed them to own some technology. Well, we have automation around our incidents. We have paging to deal with, like pager duty stuff to deal with. We have like all of these other like pieces of tech around our incident stack like that exists. They also own. And that was really important too. And all things incident process, we constantly have people releasing new things to production, so they will help you. They are also the team that will help you run game days, right? So they have a game day in a box tool, right? There's a ton of things that you can
I did one with them, by the
have.
way, and it was great.
I'm so
It was
glad.
such a cool experience. That is a great one. Like put that on
Mhm.
everybody's like things that they can do to improve your organization.
And they also run all of our DRX, right? Run all of the DR exercise. Like if you think about the value that running an incident brings to your org, there might be a ton of adjacent activity to that a team or a dedicated person, depending on the scale that you're at or what it is you're trying to do, might be able to accomplish. Again, my suggestion is that you bring in people for the rotation from other teams as well. Like, I really do think you gain a lot there in terms of spreading out information to the organization and bringing information out from the organization back to that centralized space to help iteratively improve on whatever it is you're doing, so that group doesn't kind of just become a little echo chamber. Uh, that is my advice.
Definitely, we solved it. Obviously, right?
Did we solve it?
I
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
know.
well, I don't really it's hard to know, right, what somebody's objections are or somebody's leadership objections might be,
Did you
like,
get objections?
to having that. I didn't, but also there was enough pain. I think there was just enough pain. I have, look, I am a firm believer that if there's not enough pain in an organization, you're not gonna see change, right? And often, I mean, the pain is circumstantial. It will happen out of nowhere. Incidents happen out of nowhere. It's not like are sometimes waiting for the big one to happen for years. Engineers are very aware that something is going to blow, and it takes a long time for it to happen. And sometimes until that kind of thing happens, the leadership won't be amenable to thinking or investing in reliability per se, right? And so, there has to be some kind of pain that is made visible to leadership. That could be people leaving who are sort of central to the functioning of the status quo, or it could be that the status quo isn't holding because, and then that's very visible at this point. But you might not see change unless something like that is true, right?
Yeah, maybe it was John who said this to me. I know, never waste a good incident, right?
Yeah.
Like there, we've all had this moment where a series of incidents or just a series of like rough questions or one bad retro where nobody has good answers and leadership is paying attention because they're being yelled at or screamed at, or it's compromising some vision that they've set forth. It's kind of like what we've learned about evolution recently. It's not like always a slow chip away, slight
Mhm.
adjustment. There are extinction events where the bad practices die, and you need to be ready to like move into that
Yeah.
space and be like, we okay, like I have a thing for this, right? Like
Well,
I'm
I
I'm
mean,
ready for this.
like people cultures need to experience real jarring things that shift their world. If you're at AWS, you're walking along and you are like, we are the best in reliability in the world. And frankly, I wouldn't necessarily argue right now that they're not anymore, by the way, but you may have just had a jarring event at your company, right? If you're at a company that relies on US East for something, you had a bunch of people going, we don't need to invest in multi-region. Like, why would we need that? And it's like, oh, and you just experienced some stuff, right? And now is the time to like, first of all, now is the time where a lot of people are going to start shouting about stuff that's bullshit because it's the time, right? Where you're going to be able to say, and it might not be valuable. Like if, they might not be the case, but now is the time, regardless of whether it's a good or bad thing to do. Now is the time, after you've experienced the shift in your worldview, to re-examine the things that you used to believe or that your organization used to believe.
Yeah, and for me, and I think a lot of engineers feel this way, we have to put away our shoulds that we've been just spraying out for years. We should get into multiple regions. We should have an instant command team. We should hire more people, right? Like we're usually ahead of some of these big events. Uh, we're the ones carrying the anxiety. We're the ones feeling the pain. Um, you have to like put all that away and you have to say, okay, what I have right now is leverage, right?
Mhm.
That leverage, like I don't need to bring back the past anymore. Like that was then, that was how I was making that argument when I didn't have leverage. When you have this leverage where there's people who are worried, there's leaders who need you, the thing to be is calm and be an incident commander. Be like,
Yeah.
okay, in this crisis, I know exactly what we need to do. Like, we need to break this down this way. So talk to me. What's important to you, boss? Okay, look at what we have here. Like, here's some research. Here's some things we've already looked into. Here's what was working that we didn't do enough of. If you're ready with that, I think that's where you can answer this question pretty clearly. Like, here, I have stuff. Like, be that
Yeah.
person.
It's really important to lay out facts and be very realistic about what this will solve and what it won't solve, right? Having instant command doesn't lessen your incidents, right? But it might make it easy. It might make your incidents go a little smoother. It might make your customers happier because they feel like you're more responsive. And by your customers, I mean not just your external customers, but also leadership folks who are waiting for an update on something, or your customer support folks who are waiting for some kind of communication or official information, right? There's all kinds of people involved in incidents who need legitimately have needs that probably aren't being met if you don't have somebody who's doing this and whose part of their responsibilities are to do this, right? So,
Somebody who's excited about every incident. I think if you can get into that space where you're like, no, this person's purpose is to make these go as well as they can. Right? Like obviously they may go poorly. Your systems may be really complex, and the investigation may take way longer than you wish it did, and the mitigation may just flap. And but that if there's at least a group that's like during the incident making everybody look at that and go, is this actually fixed? Like, what are we working on right now? What do we have any time estimates for anything? Have we
mhm,
communicated with the stakeholders? Do we know who they are?
mhm.
Like those, like running that cycle rather than what usually happens, which is like, oh God, I broke it. Like, I'm just gonna fix it. Like, I
I'm just
kind
gonna
of,
put my head
oh
doand type until it's done.
yeah, and oh, I'll send a Slack message to my boss. Can you tell everyone I'm fixing it? Right? I mean, I've been that person for sure. Like, just boss, please run interference for me while I try to fix this, and please don't tell anybody because I'm embarrassed. Right? Like all that stuff that
Mhm.
like we know happens. Having people who are like, no, we're gonna pull that out of the shadows and make this a normal part of business because that's what it is. It's just this is part of running stuff. It's messy, and we could do better. I hope most leaders will appreciate that. But I agree that I think it takes some pain from their end too before they're really going to be able to understand what you're talking about.
Well, hopefully we answered your question, dear listener. I'm sorry it took us a whole year. If you wanna write us a question on our Google form at thisisfinepod.com, I promise we'll get to it eventually. Um, and thank you for writing in, and have a
This
good
is a great
Halloween,
question.
Clint. Yeah, have a
Thank
good
you.
Halloween. I'll see you all later. Bye.
Bye.